Oh man, what up? Yeah, let's get it. Yo, 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 what is up? What is up? What is good, everybody? This is the June 14th, 2020 episode of the Boxing Source Radio Show. I'm your host, James Bell, the leader of the Boxing Source. You can follow us on Facebook, go into the Boxing Source. You can also go to Twitter and follow us at Boxing Source 2. We are also on Instagram through the Boxing Source, and you could subscribe to the YouTube channel. We currently have this particular podcast now simulcasted on YouTube, so you could, listen live through YouTube. Number to dial in is 347-237-5539. That's 347-237-5539. Press one key to get on queue, and you'll be able to talk live on the show. If you also join us on Facebook, there is a link to join live through YouTube as well. So you could talk with us from the YouTube portion on the show too. So what we're going to do is go through the particular bouts that happen in Las Vegas at the MGM Grand Conference Center, Grand Ballroom. And we'll, go through the highs and lows of that particular, fight card on Tuesday and on Thursday, and then look ahead to the fight cards that are coming up this Tuesday and this Thursday. And I kind of, had like some good and some bad with what happened on Tuesday and Thursday, because this was like I said, this was the first couple of fight cards that happened in the U.S. Since what was it, like March 7th? Remember, they tried to do something on March 14th, but those events got canceled, particularly over in New York City and in the Washington, D.C. area. So now you had the long-awaited time for these fights to come on through Top Rank. And, for me, in that first particular fight card that happened, waiting for, the main event, Shakur Stevenson versus Felix-Caraballo. Shakur Stevenson fighting at 130 pounds. They did have, first fight on the card. Robeisy Ramirez was, featured in that first fight. Robeisy Ramirez had gotten that first round knockout, and it was like within a minute. And that started around 7:20 or so p.m. Eastern time. And then, after that, it was a good little while before the second fight came down between Quatavius Cash and Calvin Metcalf. And, that particular bout that went, almost a full 6 rounds. There was, a headbutt that happened in the middle of that particular fight that caused a cut over Calvin Metcalf's eye. But Quatavius Cash pretty much, dominated that particular bout up to that point. He just didn't score any knockdowns or have, Calvin Metcalf seriously hurt. If you caught the live while it was, doing the those two fights, the Robersy Ramirez fight and the Quatavius Cash fight, you would have seen me enjoying that second particular fight for a certain reason. But Quatavius Cash was back on the winning streak, or on the winning column, so to speak, as he had, a little bit of a struggle through his past few fights. So he is able to get himself back into the winning column. He had started his career, I think, 11-0, pro career at 11-0. But then after that, had lost, it was two fights, two next fights. So he was coming in there trying to, get back in the winning column. And he was able to do that against Calvin Metcalf, who really didn't have much of a shot there. Calvin Metcalf only threw arm punches throughout the whole particular fight. He was just trying to, go into the inside and throw arm punches instead of, taking his time and timing Quatavius Cash. While on the other side, Quatavius Cash was sharp on a lot of his punches. His form was like very crisp and had a lot of emphasis behind his punches. And, he was connecting with pretty much a lot of his shots. Nothing really with much power behind it, but still he was able to score very well. And he got the technical decision win with the scores of 60-54, 60-55, and 59-55 are there. So Quatavius Cash got that win. And then the next fight that happened, you had Guido Vianello versus Don Hainsworth. Don Hainsworth was just showing up there to get a check. At the weigh-in, Don Hainsworth weighed in at 295 pounds. And he's, not necessarily a tall dude. Guido Vianello, was fairly young guy, starting off at 6-0, had 6 KOs, but then I was able to knock down Don Hainsworth in the first round. And, Hainsworth was just pretty much like, kneeling down a little bit when Jay Nady was counting. And then after that, Jay Nady just stopped the count and stopped the bout for Guido Vianello to get the win. The next fight, which ended up being a co-feature bout, had from Toledo, Ohio, Jared Anderson, who's a real big baby, going up against Johnny Langston. And that was, Jared Anderson's 4th pro fight. He was able to have the fight stopped at the 155 mark in the 3rd round. It was the first fight that he had past the first round. But even in that particular fight, Jared Anderson was able to showcase a little bit of his skills there against Johnny Langston. He was getting hit a good amount of times in that particular bout. But still, even with that being said, he showed like he could be a very good fighter to watch out for in the future. Being there under, top rank. They have a good little bit of a stable of fighters there in the heavyweight division. Given Jared Anderson's nickname, he might be slated to fight a particular fighter that did get signed by Top Rank, and will have their first fight under the Top Rank banner pretty soon. So Jared Anderson getting his stoppage win over Johnny Langston to go to 4-0 and have 4 KOs registered. Main event was the WBO featherweight champion fighting at super featherweight, Shakur Stevenson, going up against Felix Caraballo. Caraballo was kind of like a replacement opponent because the original plan was to have Shakur Stevenson in about a fairly a little bit of a more competitive bout, so to speak, against Rafael Rivera. But Rivera couldn't make it due to visa issues. So on 2 weeks' notice, Felix Caraballo was placed in as the opponent. And with that being said, you had Shakur Stevenson pretty much in a showcase type of a fight against Felix Caraballo. Caraballo was just coming there, going for it, not really throwing punches in a come forward style, while Shakur Stevenson was able to use his range, his little speed, and use the right jab in order to keep his distance from Caraballo. At one point in this fight, he did kind of hurt his left hand a little bit. That was a little bit of a concern that it was fairly damaged, but he was still able to get through this particular fight and score the knockout victory, with a body shot. So he was able to stay undefeated, and it's going to be interesting to see what happens with Shakur Stevenson. Kind of like talk with a few people after the fight. He's saying that he's going to pretty much be at 130 pounds. So you're not really going to see Stevenson defend that WBO featherweight title. They're kind of looking to move him up in weight, put him at 130, and you have a few guys there at the 130-pound division. One of them he's not going to really be able to face. So looks like Shakur Stevenson will wait it out for the winner of the WBC super featherweight title fight between Miguel Berchelt and Oscar Valdez. Yep, that Oscar Valdez that ended up relinquishing that WBO featherweight title to move up in weight in order to face Miguel Berchelt. Okay. So after Shakur Stevenson was able to win that WBO title, he was slated to, defend that WBO featherweight championship on March 14th, but was not able to. Therefore, they said that they were going to have him featured as the first fight back in Top Rank's card. So that's what we saw there. I kind of felt like, for me, when it comes to Shakur Stevenson, a lot of people feel that he has a lot of talent. But he's not someone that kind of gives that wow factor, so to speak, when it comes to young fighters that we talk about, whether it's in the 130-pound division or 126, 130, or 135. There's a few young fighters that are out there that, boxing fans, boxing people talk about. And the thing about that is, with that being said, we don't necessarily get it from Shakur Stevenson all that much. So for me, I feel like Shakur Stevenson does have a little bit of work to do. If he does move up to 130 pounds, maybe he'll get himself you know into that type of weight and frame with his frame, and see if he can utilize his skills and mix in a little bit of power with that before he goes up and faces the likes of Miguel Burchell there at 130 pounds, or someone else there at that super featherweight division. So I mean, that's kind of like how I like summarize those those bouts are there at the MGM Conference Center Grand Ballroom. That was June 9th. And like I said, I mean, it was like almost 3 hours or so, how they like gone through the fight card. I had originally started out a live telecast or simulcast to give like reactions to the fight card. But after that first fight, it was a good little bit until the second fight. And by the time that second fight was done, it was like 8:30 p.m. Eastern time. And they still had, the three bouts still on the docket. So after they went through those first two bouts, the next three kind of like went in, good enough succession that the flow didn't kind of get taken away there. So that tail end of that fight card, they kind of like did things fairly well as far as like timing and bringing the fighters out and having them prepared and ready to go, even with the protocols and everything that they had to follow for it. But in the June 11th card, that one, that had been on at 8 p.m. Eastern time, and they had started it, with the co-feature, quote unquote, co-feature bout between Adam Lopez and Louis Correa. Adam Lopez, who had been in the ring against Oscar Valdez, going up against Louis Correa, and that was a co-feature bout, and that bout was a fairly good bout to watch, especially for it to be the opening bout. That thing, went the full 10 rounds, and it was the guy that they call Blue Nose, Adam Lopez, being able to score that majority decision victory. They said like he won the last two rounds on two of the judges' scorecards to pull out the win. For me, I just felt like Louis Correa was there. Now, he was there to fight. That's the thing that, I kind of liked about this particular bout is Louis Correa came in there to fight. He came in there to win. I like bouts, whether it's, a high level bout or a low level bout, where no matter what the odds are, that both fighters come in there to win. If you're like a large underdog, usually there's like kind of like two things that happen. Either you're there to just show up and to make, the feature fighter look good, or you're there to upset that favorite. And Louis Correa was there to upset that favorite. And I like that. He was there. He was like in Adam Lopez's grill from round 1 to round 10. Lopez had a couple of instances where he was, not looking all too good. Louis Correa never gave up at any point in that particular fight. And that's how you had the decision basically be a majority decision. I felt like Louis Cormier landed a whole lot more punches than the CompuBots kind of like showed during the fight. I like you can't like land like the few punches that they said that Louis Cormier landed and being able to affect Adam Lopez like he was able to affect him. So, with that being said, it's like a good bout between those two fighters. Adam Lopez was able to win, a minor title in that particular fight at featherweight. So we'll see where he's going to be positioned in the featherweight division as far as like the featherweight rankings. Okay. They also had, Gabriel Muratalla going up against Fernando Robles in bantamweight division, and Muratalla, just was able to take out Robles in the first round, where there was like about 30 seconds left in the first round. So he has 3 wins in his pro career with the third knockout, that being the third knockout victory. So that is, that's pretty much all you can say about that particular, matchup. You also had Mike Sanchez and Eric Mondragon in a 4-round bout. They traded knockdowns in the first round, but then it was able to go like the 4 rounds that it was scheduled for, and it ended up being a majority draw. 2 scores of 38-38, with 1 score of 39-37 for Eric Mondragon. So both of those fighters are still unbeaten. They just have a draw on their record. And then you had the main event. Oh, man. You had the main event, man. Jesse Magdaleno against Jennifer-Vecente. And, coming into this fight, you had Jesse Magdaleno as a highly ranked contender in the featherweight division. He was within the top 5 at featherweight for the WBO. He was ranked number 1 in the WBC. And so, him being a former world champ there at the super bantamweight division, he, moving up in weight and campaigning there at the featherweight division. He's, trying to see if he could get, a world title shot. He did, kind of like win that one of those minor featherweight titles there within the WBC, and had, defended it against Rafael Rivera last year. But him being put in this position against Jennifer-Vecente, Vicente just was, man, he, looked in there. He was fouling Magdaleno. You had the whole thing happen in the 4th round where Vicente clearly landed low to where Magdaleno dropped his guard, and then Vicente hit him with a right hand before Robert Byrd was able to step in. And so Magdaleno went down to the canvas, and it was like a good amount of time that the 4th round was paused. I thought that, the fight would have been kind of halted there at that particular point, but nope. Robert Byrd didn't do that. He just made the judgment that Jennifer-Vecente was going to have 2 points deducted in that particular round, and then they continued to fight. And I mean, for me, man, it still was able, they were still able to go through 10 rounds in that particular bout. The next round, Magdalena was able to score a knockdown, but still was not able to, like finish off Vicente in that particular round or any, round after that. And, with that being said, you have Vicente in the 10th round. I mean, Magdaleno was well ahead on the scorecards by that last round. And, it was something to the point where I would pretty much say, like, Vicente having another low blow, and that just had Robert Bird say, "You know what, man? This is it. That's it, man. You done. You out of here, man. Just forget it." And Magdaleno got the disqualification win. So he only has that lone loss to Isaac Dogway. That was at Super Bantamweight for the WBO Super Bantamweight Championship. You have Jesse Magdaleno now at a record of 28-1, and he's there as a contender in the featherweight division. He did call out Gary Russell Jr. That fight's not going to happen. Not really going to happen. There's, I just don't see Gary Russell Jr. being anywhere near interested in that particular bout. I talked with Gary Sr., and he's pretty much echoed that. When I talk with him, shout out to Gary Sr. And he's going to be going for surgery on his leg tomorrow. So he's going to be going through that surgery and the recovery process. So hopefully he has a fast recovery from that surgery that's scheduled for tomorrow. So there is that. But with Magdaleno, like I was saying before, him being rated number 1 in the WBC, he's also like rated around, I'd say, number 4 in the WBO currently. We have to see like what happens with that WBO title. Shakur Stevenson officially moves up, makes that WBO title vacant. There is a chance that Jesse Magdaleno might fight for that vacant WBO title against McConnell. So that remains to be seen. I'd rather, like, even if Gary Russell Jr. did stay at 126, even though like no other champion that's out there in Josh Warrington and Kanzu is willing to fight him, and see if they could try to get him in a fight against Kay Galahad over in the UK. But I don't know if that's going to be anywhere near an interesting fight for Gary Russell Jr. I think that there should be, and I said this in talking with him, I was on this podcast a few months ago, they should have Gary Russell Jr. against Gervonta Tank Davis on a pay-per-view. That would be a fight, but they aren't really considering that. They want to feature Gervonta Tank Davis in a fight where he may, he's most likely going to, get that win. So that's why they're kind of lining him up for Leo Santa Cruz by the end of this year. Here we are, we're in mid-June, and won't be that long until we get to the tail end of 2020. And Gervonta Tank Davis was lined up to have a pay-per-view level fight on Showtime, and so they're going to keep that on the schedule. They're going to keep it on the docket. With that being said, that's the thing with Gervonta Tank Davis. They're planning to fight Leo Santa Cruz. But for Jason Magdaleno, he's kind of like in a position where he could fight for a world title fairly soon. But with this performance that he had against Yennefer Vicente, I was not that much impressed with that. at all. Later on down the line, in this podcast, we are going to talk about the fight cards that were announced on June 9th that will take place on June 16th and June 18th, which will have as the main event on June 16th, Joshua Greer Jr. going up against Mike Plania. The co-feature bout is Antonio DeMarco against Giovanni Santillan. That's going to actually, I think that's going to be a fairly good fight. Antonio DeMarco against Giovanni Santillan. And the main event for the June 18th card is Jose Pedraza against Mikel Lespierre. And co-feature bout is Gabriel Flores Jr. against Jose Ruiz. So that's what we have on slate for next week. So that's gonna kind of be what I'm going to preview here, in the next few moments. So that's what we got going down so far here in the boxing world over in America. They have, a few things that have been planned out overseas. They actually did have a fight card over in Finland on Friday, which featured Marius Wack against Kevin Johnson, with Kevin Johnson losing to Marius Wack by unanimous decision. Kevin Johnson has had, almost 60-something fights? Yeah, 60-something fights, man. Or whatever it is. It's been, 62, right? It's 52. And this was like his fifth consecutive loss. He's fought Martin Bakole, Nate Gorman, Philip Hergovich, Daniel Dubois, Andy Ruiz, Anthony Joshua, Kubrat Pulev. He actually beat Francisco Pianeta. That's a, fairly notable name. Emmanuel Char, Christian Hammer, Derek Chisora, Tyson Fury. Man, he's fought everybody. Harold Sconiers. He's fought everybody. Oh man, you know what? I might find a way to get Kevin Johnson on the show, man. We talk about somebody that's fought everybody. Kevin Johnson has fought everybody, man. He fought what is that? Anthony Hamilton. I'ma tell everybody. Well, he's fought everybody. Come on. He's fought the who's who in the heavyweight division, to say the least. Like, my goodness. But Marius Wack, had, he had that fight against Dylan White on December 7th over in Saudi Arabia. So that was his last loss by unanimous decision. And he was able to have this fight here against Kevin Johnson. So Marius Wack still, out there in the heavyweight division. But, he had lost his Povetkin, lost to Big Baby Miller, lost to Archer Spilka, lost to Martin Bakole, and like I said, the recent fight against Dylan White. But he was able to be part of this fight card that was over in Poland, Konary, Poland, which also had, let me see, who else was in this thing? They said what was it? Ewell Pietkowska against Karina Kopinska. I mean, they're having these fights here just to, have fillers for that fight card in Poland. But I think there was there was something in Berlin, Germany, with Jack Colquet winning an international super welterweight title. What, man, you mean to tell me that he's going to be able to fight for a world title again? Oh my goodness, son, like this is something, man. So Jack Kolke, who's fought, Sergey Derevyanchenko, fought Demetrius Andrade, fought Dennis Hogan. Um, I guess he's going to be put in position to fight for the world title in the super welterweight division. He's had most of his fights over in Germany. He had the fight against Masi Selecki over in Newark. The fight against Sergey Derevyanchenko over in Minneapolis. So that's kind of like what we have here with Jack Kolke. He's able to put himself in position to fight for a world title. A shout out to Fighter IQ joining in through YouTube. If you do want to join in the conversation, you can call in at 347-237-5539. Or if you're on YouTube, you can join in through the StreamYard link that's put on there right now. So that's what we got. And this will be available on iTunes, Google Podcast, Spotify, or Anchor.fm. So you'll be able to listen to it at any particular point after this thing is done. So that's that's what I was seeing here, what was going on over the past week. Did talk about what is planned for or through Top Rank. I have to see if there will be like any more fights or fight cards coming in. There may be a few things going on in Nicaragua as well in the near future. You might see Francisco Fonseca being in a fight. So that's kind of like what's going on there in that particular instance. So we're just slowly but surely getting back into it with the sport of boxing. And even though these couple of fights that were shown on Top Rank leave a little bit to be desired, it's a start. It's a start. I think they kind of, were talking about how the ratings were for this fight card. I think it was something to the point where it was like 315,000 or so that watched it. I think that 315,000 that watched it on Tuesday. Well, no, that was Thursday. It averaged around 311,000, and it peaked at 392,000 viewers. That was the Thursday card. I think the Tuesday card got around that same, around those same numbers. Trying to look for, that here. I mean, like I said, 311,000 viewers for the Magdaleno-Vecente card. For the Shakur Stevenson card, not really seeing the ratings there for that. Did stumble upon them saying for Shakur Stevenson, they're planning on getting him back in there in September. But who knows what that is going to, be against. He says that he's not going to be sure that he'll remain at 130 pounds, but, he says that he's going to bounce around as far as like being at 126 or at 130, or seeing if they could try to find something at 135 pounds. But I think it'll be a little bit of time before he'll be able to get themselves situated at 135 pounds there. So that's something that remains to be seen. I'm, kind of like waiting to see what else is going to be coming up within this month, because the bouts that I have seen or be announced isn't until July. You have the fight between Joe Smith Jr. and Eleider Alvarez, and that particular bout is kind of being set for July 16th. So that one is still a good ways away. That's like another 6 weeks or so before that fight ends up happening. So from this point until 6 weeks, we got to have some other fight that would be good enough to have in this particular instance. We got to see if there's going to be more coming down the pipe there in that instance. Now it still seems like they're going to have Daniel Dubois against Joe Joyce on July 11th. But that remains to be seen how the protocols will be done for that. Well, it's not going to be for July 11th. They're gonna see if they can just have it sometime in December. And I mean, for me, that was one fight that I was looking forward to. So I mean, with that date that they had, July 11th, they're saying like for this, it's going to be something where they want to have fans in the stands. So since they want to have fans in the stands, they're not going to go ahead and push for that bout to happen on July 11th. They're going to wait it out, see when more of the safety protocols get lifted over in the UK. And then once that happens, then they'll go forward with that bout between Joe Joyce and Daniel Dubois. So we got to see like how all of that shapes up. There was also like one fight that was scheduled through PBC that's gonna be a good amount of time before that happens. So this is like the cards that we have for Top Rank is basically what we got up to this particular point. I haven't really seen much as far as like the smaller fight cards that could be happening, like in the areas of like a Philadelphia or the DC area or New York or somewhere like Michigan or where a lot of the fights and fighters kind of reside at. So that this is going to be basically a wait and see approach to see what happens with most of these fights and these fighters. Excuse me, I had to get water. So I mean, having this break puts things like kind of up in the air as far as like what could happen for the rest of 2020. I think that this break for 3 months, it's basically been 3 months from the time that they shut down live sporting events up until now. It's been 3 months, and a good amount of the fights that were planned are out the window, and now it's like, what are these promoters, promotional companies, fighters, and matchmakers going to do once action picks back up? Um, I think that you have an opportunity to make some of the best fights that you could possibly make, or good action fights, where you don't necessarily have to have a big crowd in order for that fight to take place. You know, I know that a lot of these promotional companies stress the importance of having a live gate, as that kind of drives where the purse comes from for some fighters or particular fighters. Okay. But you got to be able to do something to where you drive the audience to watch it on TV. Okay. This was an opportunity on Tuesday and Thursday to get boxing fans and those that haven't really watched boxing that much or haven't watched boxing in a while to, focus on being there on the, or seeing the fighters there on the screen. Okay. Top Rank does have, a deal with ESPN. Multi-fight deal with ESPN where they have to have a certain amount of fight cards be taking place during the year. And I don't know, I don't have the complete specifics of their budget, but whatever they have to work with, they're going to have to see if they could get some good enough fights on, their fight cards with the budget that they have. They can't wait until much later on down in the year to try to schedule fight card after fight card after fight card after fight card, because you're not going to have, people like investing in it. Like, of course, we're going to have Tyson Fury versus Deontay Wilder late in the year. But we're waiting on the likes of Vasyl Lomachenko versus Teofimo Lopez. We're waiting for Miguel Berchelt versus Oscar Valdez, because that's going to be, posed as a main event on the Top Rank card. You still have instances where you're going to have some of the other heavyweights that are going to be featured, whether it's Jarrell Miller or Oscar Rivas or something like that. I don't know if they're going to have something worked out for Kubrat Pulev, as Kubrat Pulev is scheduled to face Anthony Joshua for the Unified Heavyweight Championship of the world. So there's also that. You have fights that are going to be in the light heavyweight division. I did talk about Joe Smith Jr. Against Eleider Alvarez. That's going to be a fight to be like the top contender for the WBO light heavyweight championship. So you have that. You also have, fights with other world champions that they have there, not just with the Vasyl Lomachenko, like I said, with Teofimo Lopez. You also have things there where you have Artur Beterbiev that's out there. You have Dimitri Bivol, but he's going to kind of be there with main events. Gvozdyk is kind of put himself in retirement. You have Gilberto Ramirez, but they ain't gonna do nothing with Gilberto Ramirez, man. So a lot of possible fights could take place within Top Rank alone, but still with the other promotional companies, with the guys that work with Premier Boxing Champions, you still have a good amount of fights that could be set up there. So it's going to be very interesting to see how they handle the rest of the schedule for the next 6 months. Seeing if I could add in a caller here from the 813 area code. What's going on? You're on the Boxing Source radio show. Well, I mean, you had the fights that took place on Tuesday and Thursday, headlined by Shakur Stevenson against Felix Caraballo on Tuesday. And then you had the thing with Jesse Magdaleno and Magdaleno-Vecente on Thursday, man. First fights, in the U.S. Since March 7th, so to speak. So what did you think about those?
So, and even the Magdaleno fight, honestly, I didn't watch that, but it's like, honestly, I'm at a hunger for some big time fights, and I know that there's a ton of mid-level cards that's going to typically fill out the year's boxing, things like that. But honestly, I want a big fight. But aside from that, let's say glad that boxing's back, and even just to talk a bit, just on boxing talk itself, that we kind of spoke briefly on this week with Stephen Boxer and Taylor Mayer, right? With her initial positive test for the boxing card that was supposed to go on that went on this last Tuesday. She tested positive. That point they eliminated her from the card, rightfully so. And then from that point, she went out to Denver and got her own test.
Right.
And found out that it was indeed negative at that point. And as a side note, I'm actually trying to get her to jump on our show for expecting, so I'm expecting to talk about her experience within that positive negative test. So hopefully she'll respond to me here hopefully soon. We can have on the show here maybe in a week or two or something like that. But just you think about that. You train for a fight, right?
Mm-hmm.
Just not only on the physical work, but the cost of training for a fight.
Right.
Even now, the middle at this point now, because we're in this COVID environment, so you can't typically train like you used to. Probably can't spar with people like you used to, things like that. So there's more mental control that goes on here as well, right?
Yep.
And it's so sad to see that. First of all, I'm glad she's actually healthy. But at the same time, it looks like they all need to go back somehow and revisit the protocols for testing these boxers of fights. And even this week on that, they were like, well, we're not going to just change anything just yet. But at the same time, I think if anything that shows these fighters that if they are identified for a positive test, it will definitely behoove them to, as soon as possible, go ahead and get themselves tested independently. If that positive test has been indeed correct. So like you can't afford just squandering your opportunities, especially when it comes to like these mid-level fighters that are not making a lot of money. They need to be able to make sure the test is good and make sure if it needs to, of course, be open the cards. You don't want to support anyone else to survive or something like that. But at the same time, there's a good piece of news that came out of this last week with her.
Yeah. When I talked with Bob Arum about how these fight cards were going to be, executed, there was like emphasis in reference to the level of safety when it comes to these fights and these fighters. And, the thing with Michaela Mayer, who was scheduled to be on that June 9th card, for her to get the news that she had tested positive for COVID-19 at that particular time, that was, a serious downer for her, and then, after going back home, basically, and having her own test, her own independent test, and her coming back negative, that kind of, has her in a little bit of like she has mixed feelings right now, because she was, preparing herself, she was there undefeated, 12-0, preparing to fight Helen Joseph, and, kind of like being a showcase fighter there for that particular fight card. and to kind of like having that taken away from her, that's, that hurts, that hurts. So now with her having like a negative test, they're going to try to see if they can put her in a card in July. Hopefully that'll work out for her. I'm not sure if it'll be like the same, fight there, but it also kind of like opened things up for like how these fight cards could be handled. Because here we are, it's like this is the first card that they're going to have, and they have one fighter already out or taken out because of them testing positive for COVID-19 at that particular fight, at that particular time. Excuse me. So now she can't fight. Helen Joseph can't fight. A fight card that would have had like 6 fights is only knocked down to 5. And so scheduling kind of like gets thrown off a little bit. But I had suggested it, earlier in the week. I said, if you're going to have this be possible on these fight cards, y'all might have to see about planning to have a backup fight waiting in the wings, just in case if there's, someone that tests positive for COVID-19 and not able to fight, because when before all of this, you had filler fights, right? Where if a fight that was on a televised card ended way too early and they had like a lot of time in between one fight and the next fight, whether it's the co-feature bout or the main event, they would put in a 4-round fight or a 6-round fight in there to fill that time up. So they should see about doing the same thing here.
Yeah, you're right about that. And another thing to consider too, at this point, back to this week, you got all these other people, whether it be promoters, network executives, things like that. They even box themselves looking at how this was handled, looking at how these things transpired, looking at all the protocols that they're exposed to now in regards to being properly tested correctly, that is. And basically, I'm getting at this point. When you look at sports across the board now, whether it be boxing, basketball, hockey, even football. I haven't heard too many stories on football, but what I'm getting at, I've seen a number of athletes have basically stated that they're hesitant about coming back. I'm trying to think of an NBA player that made a statement this week because he's a major player. He basically said, basketball is not that important right now. We just need to be careful, things like that. But at the same time, I mean, those basketball players, they're making big, large salaries. So once again, these mid-level fighters, they can't just afford to sit back and wait. Bottom line, they want to get back into the ring. So they're carefully looking at how this is handled. And in a sense, would you take more of a risk to rush back, knowing it's not safe, in that regard? And honestly, some people probably would. But once again, that's why they have all these protocols in place right now. And even right now, it's not perfect. It's not what we can about it. It's not perfect, but at least they're trying to protect the fighters from this contracting that virus that's definitely devastating not only the sports world but the world in general. That's been well covered throughout the past few months. But like I said, everyone's watching on this. Everyone's watching. Everyone needs to get it right. And like I said, just don't need to rush. We all want sports. We all love sports. We need sports to a degree. But like I said, everyone's definitely watching.
Yeah, and the way that this thing will be handled from this point forward is going to affect, sporting events and live events in general. And you mentioned, the instance of, I guess, a basketball player being concerned and that type of thing. You're going to have that a lot. I think you had it when it came to baseball as well. Like some baseball players were concerned about, being able to join in and whatnot. So that kind of was something that would be a concern here for, even not just in the boxing industry, but in sports in general. So you have like a lot of these things, like they're trying to see if they could start up the NBA season again over in Orlando or something like that, and you'll have something for baseball and hockey as well. And then after all that is done, then you're going to have football starting up. So that's going to be even more of a concern as far as like how they're going to handle things to where you're going to have safety protocols in place. But recently, I saw something like where New Zealand was able to have live events happen. But the thing is like New Zealand didn't necessarily have any new cases for a few weeks there. So, that's why they were able to, kind of like have that take place. Not sure if you were like in the middle of something or whatnot. There was like a lot of background noise. But I'll get you back on here in a bit. Yeah, like I was saying there with New Zealand, they didn't have any new cases there for a few weeks. So that's why they were able to go through and be able to have live events where a lot of people were able to attend and be, they're sitting in the stands. But when it comes to, these other countries, not just the US and the UK, but like Germany or other places as well, they still are kind of reluctant to have those live events, even though there were a couple of things that have happened recently in these countries, but that's like a whole nother story. But here with the sport of boxing, we'll see how these, different events turn out. Like I said, they had something with the events on June 9th and June 11th, and then we're going to have something again on June 16th and June 18th. Josh Greer Jr. is going to be the main event on June 16th. And he'll be, facing Mike Colania there, and also Jose Pedraza is going to be featured on June 18th, going up against Mikel Lespierre. So that's going to be the type of bouts that we're going to see here over the, next few weeks. So you got June 16th and June 18th, and you're going to have something, I guess, June 23rd and June 25th. There until we get into July. And then when July comes up, we're going to start seeing more boxing cards come up, not just through Top Rank, but through other, promotional companies as well. So that's what I'm kind of like looking forward to see what happens there in that instance.
And going forward, even something like some PVC, for example. They're sitting back looking at this model as well, and they know they need to get back in the game. I mean, at this point, PVC has a network of Fox, FX1, all those networks that they host their fights on. So they have many, many opportunities to put on fights as well. So hopefully we can see more come from them as well. And at the same time, like I voiced this concern about my desire to want to see a big time fight. Realistically, I think we'd be very lucky, if we were able to get a big time fight between, regardless of weight class, between champion or in the defense, something like that. I think we'd be very lucky if we were able to see that this year. And I mean, going right now, the finish, I don't think that's going to happen because these battle competitions could be take off the rest of the year and just sit out until things improve economically and also health-wise for fighters as well. At the same time, just to throw another name out there that we talk all the time, Gary Russell Jr. We know he fought already this year. He's fighting one year. He's already been committed to fighting more again this year. I would say just do the same, man. It just sucks to him sometimes because we talked about this last week. Someone out there like your teams, we talked about this week. They just fail to mention his name. And you know what the thing about it? If they get him on TV against these guys this week, why can't they put him on TV later this year? And this is only June. It wasn't a rough fight. Alvarez on the just hiring back and forth who's going to fight next. But like that, I think it's just a crazy time right now that we have never seen in talk like this, where we don't know who's going to fight, and when we don't have to see the big fights again. We just don't know. Because all questions are being answered day by day, month by month, as things come back together as the options were reopened, in simple words.
Well, I mean, you did mention Gary Russell Jr. With him, I think it may be a little bit before he gets back in the ring. I did talk about, when Jesse Magdaleno mentioned the name of Gary Russell Jr. as far as like saying like, he'll end up being mandatory and that, he will want to fight Gary Russell Jr. But, I talked with Gary Russell Sr. earlier today, and he, said that there's like no real interest for Gary Jr. to fight Jesse Magdaleno. That's number one. And then number two, it may be a little bit before, Gary Jr. is in the ring because you'll have like with Gary Sr. told me that he's scheduled to be getting surgery on his leg tomorrow. So he's going to be, getting that surgery tomorrow and then having that recovery period before he could, get back and move around, so to speak, to be there to be in his corner, to be in Gary Jr.'s corner. So, with that being said, I mean, you probably won't have Gary Jr. there. Gary Antoine and Gary Antonio Russell might be able to have a couple of fights with Gary Jr. Being there, the trainer there. So Gary Jr. will probably be seen in the ring training those guys. But when it comes to Gary Russell Jr. fighting, I think it may be a little bit before we see that. As y'all, have to get updated news on Gary Sr. as far as like how his surgery goes tomorrow and what the recovery period will be for that. So that's, the news in reference to Gary Jr. Other fights that could be happening, that's out there within these next few weeks. I think, they could come up with a few that could be a little bit interesting. But I know that with PBC, they are planning to have a fight card for July 25th, with the headline being Thomas Delorme versus Jamal James. And that may be ended up in the Fox Studios in Los Angeles. But it's not really like confirmed, 100% confirmed, but that's kind of like what has been leaked out through the boxing media, is that Jamal James and Thomas Delorme will fight on July 25th for the vacant WBA welterweight world championship. We know that the super champion is Manny Pacquiao, and he defeated Keith Thurman, and that had Keith Thurman relinquish that particular belt last year. There was supposed to be a fight for the WBA regular championship between like Rasputin and Yordenis, not necessarily Yordenis Ugas, but Rasputin had his title stripped. So this is why they're kind of like having this fight between Delorme and Jamal James. So at least they have that planned, but that's not for another, 6 weeks plus, So that's kind of like the deal of what's happening with PBC, man. Yeah. All right, guys, no problem. So, with that being said, I kind of feel like there's a couple of other fights that could be made within Premier Boxing Champions. In especially within the 154-pound division. I think they have a lot of fighters there in 154-pound division. They do have a few there at 147 pounds, where they could have a few fights happening in that particular weight class. There's a few guys that are hanging around at 140 that they could make fights with as well. So it's going to be interesting there in reference to PBC. The thing is that I kind of feel like they may want to, come in and just have, this little fight card over at like the Fox Studios in Los Angeles. They might have something on July 25th and then have something that next week, probably like around August 2nd or something like that. I don't know how their schedule is with Fox for this year. So I think that they're kind of like planning a few things to happen, so to speak. So that's the thing in reference to PBC. Through Matchroom, they are looking to have a few fights coming up in August, like the featured fight that was scheduled for around this particular time was Dylan White versus Alexander Povetkin. They are trying to figure if they're going to have that go through around August 8th or around August 15th or something like that. So you have that that's on a slate. You also have the thing with Derek Chisora that was slated to, go up against Alexander Usyk, but that hasn't really been rescheduled. Derek Chisora actually has offered to help in training with Alexander Povetkin. He said that he'll fly over to Russia to get Chisora there to train with Alexander Povetkin. So that looks like that may be a little bit of interest there if Derek Chisora goes over to face or to train with Alexander Povetkin to have Povetkin preparing for his fight against Dylan White, which could be around August 8th or August 15th. Looked like they wanted to have the Taylor Serrano fight still part of that particular card. So that would be interesting to see how that ends up. Having Katie Taylor against Amanda Serrano be part of that fight card. That's another good matchup that I was looking forward to, seeing. But most of these other fights that had been planned out, it will be a good little bit of time before any of those things materialize. I kind of feel like that is something where you're going to have a good amount of time before these fights materialize. We have to see how these first, like the travel restrictions go, safety protocols for these venues, large gatherings, how they're going to handle large gatherings from this particular point forward. And once they, have those restrictions, what most of these promoters are waiting on is for these, safety restrictions or safety protocols to be, allowed, and travel restrictions to be lifted. And once that's done, then we'll see more fights be announced. I think that one thing that's going to be key is to see like what happens with that Joe Smith fight against Eleider Alvarez, because I think that is to me that's a very good matchup. That's not something that kind of I didn't really expect that to even be announced, even though you had Joe Smith Jr. Who did win his fight in January. When he was able to get a win and kind of like put himself in position to maybe be a contender for a world title. He defeated Jesse Hart in a bout there on January 11th over in Atlantic City. He did lose to Dimitri Bivol for the WBA version of the light heavyweight title. But he's still there as a contender, still dangerous with a punch. So that's going to be something that I'm looking ahead to once they finalize that fight between Joe Smith Jr. and Eleider Alvarez, former unified world champion Eleider Alvarez. And that could be a fight that could position one of those guys to fight for a world title once again. But after that, we'll see if they have more fights that could be proposed or opened up, so that they could get things going there. So that's going to be something that we're going to, watch out for is your fight between those guys. So, other than that, I kind of like see that there may be more things later on down the line. Like I said, the fights next week with Josh Greer Jr. going up against Mike Plania, that, is something where, Joshua Greer, who, has had a couple of highlights in his career. I think that, this could be a good little opportunity for him, for, Josh Greer to get himself in the spotlight for people to watch out for. So if he's, able to do something where he can be a highlight, create a highlight, so to speak, against Mike Plania, then that could, kind of catapult him up to doing something. And he got to do this, man. He got to be able to do this here against Mike Plania. Like, look, man, like Mike Plania is 23-1 from the Philippines, man. 23-1 with 12 KOs. And yeah, man. His resume is looking Swiss cheese like, man. Looking Swiss cheese like there, man. If you're able to look here on YouTube, man, I'm gonna see if I could put this thing up, man. It's like he's fought guys. Let's see, Giovanni Gutierrez with only, 9 fights. Julio Buitrago, 13 wins, 19 losses. Fought a guy in Santos City, Philippines, with a record of 8 wins, 30 losses, and 4 draws. At least he was able to, be in that 10-round bout in his last fight. But someone like fighting a guy like Renan Portes at 10-8, 13, 18-4. He lost to Juan Carlos Payano by unanimous decision. But that was kind of something where Payano won that fight fairly significantly. But like we're seeing here, 0-3-2, 21-4, 14, 28-6, 9-17-2. So I mean, that's what they got here for us in this fight card, man. Like I said, that Antonio DeMarco versus Giovanni Santillan, that's probably going to be the more interesting bout in this fight card. We're going to see Giovanni Santillan from San Diego go up against Antonio DeMarco, and I think here in this particular instance, like Santillan has been brought up fairly well up to this particular point. I mean, he's had a few bouts, good amount of bouts that were scheduled for 8 rounds. He's had that for a good little while since 2014 and 2015 and stuff. Then he went up ahead and fought in 10-round bouts. In 2017, he was the WBO or the NABO welterweight champion there at welterweight. And then he fought, he's defended that title a couple of times. And now he's going to be going up against Antonio DeMarco, so it's going to be something here where he's going to be able to fight against a former world champion in Antonio DeMarco. And with that being said, DeMarco had the world titles at lightweight. He had been a world champion at lightweight. He's fought the likes of Jesse Vargas, Francis Barthélemy, Omar Figueroa Jr., Jamal James. So it's gonna be something where we see like Antonio DeMarco. I don't know, man. I don't know, because DeMarco had his fight against Jamal James last year, where he lost by unanimous decision. And it was like pretty much like almost a sweep, but he won like 8 rounds. Jamal James won 8 rounds to 2 by Antonio DeMarco. So here, I just think that this is going to be something where Giovanni Santillan would be able to kind of get a win here. There's a couple of other bouts: Cameron Carell versus Boburzan Mamanov. Yeah, Boburzan Mamanov. And then you have Isaiah Jones against Nicolas Sekniashvili. Hold on a second. Sekniashvili. All right. So that's going to be another fight there in the middleweight division. You're also going to have Hector Perez against Juan Torres there in that particular fight card. So That's what we have on slate for Tuesday night. Thursday night, you're going to have Jose Pedraza against Mikel Lespierre. Yeah, that's right. Jose Pedraza against against Mikel Lespierre. That'll be interesting. Um, you had Pedraza, who did lose to Tank Davis for that IBF Super Featherweight Championship. Um, he also fought Ray Beltran. So he's been a 2 division world champion, IBF Super Featherweight champion, WBO lightweight champion. Did lose to Bas Lomachenko. Lost his last fight to Jose Cepeda in September of last year. Going up against Mikel Lespierre, was 22 wins, 1 loss, and 1 draw. He lost to Maurice Hooker last year for the WBO super lightweight title. It was almost pretty much a near shutout by Maurice Hooker in that particular fight. And with Lespierre, he's kind of like getting himself back into contention around that super lightweight division. So that's going to be what the co-feature bout is in that fight card. Let's see, what else we have on store for that fight card. I mean, you have, like I said, Gabriel Flores Jr. against Josek Ruiz. That is the co-feature bout in the lightweight division. You're going to have David Kaminsky going up against Clay Collard. Clay Collard is an MMA fighter, or was an MMA fighter. And then you're also going to have scheduled is Freeman Gonzalez in a fight at super featherweight, and Victor Rodriguez will face Justin Horsley in the super lightweight division. Now on June 20th, you're going to also have a fight card in Mexico. Emmanuel Navarrete is going to be fighting there. And he'll be fighting Uriel Lopez, who was 13 wins, 13 losses, and 1 draw. So it's going to probably be an early night, so to speak, for Emmanuel Navarrete. You're going to have Carlos Ornelas versus Edwin Palomares. You will have Sergio Chirino Sanchez against Gustavo Alan Pina. And then Sylvia Torres will be fighting Edith De Jesus Flores, and Ivan Armando Garcia will face Roberto Palomares. So that's the fight cards that we have going for this week. So we're kind of like looking forward to seeing what happens with those. There's going to be more to come in reference to those things. With that being said, I mean you have the whole thing that's been going on as far as like the announcements of the Tyson Fury Anthony Joshua thing. Yeah, it's like that's not, to me, that wasn't really news. They were just announcing that to kind of like put water on the fire from what was happening at that particular point. Other than that, there really isn't that much news that was floating around. Real quick, shout out to Maple Avenue Boxing and Fitness over in Dallas. When I was over in the Dallas area covering the fight card that was featured with Jesse Vargas and Mikey Garcia, did stop by Maple Avenue Boxing and Fitness. Had a interview there over at that boxing facility. They did provide me with a shirt there, so shout out to Maple Avenue Boxing and Fitness there. So might have more things to talk with those that are running that particular gym here in the future as things are opening back up. They do have a few things going on in that particular gym, still following the safety protocols there for people that do visit Maple Avenue Boxing and Fitness. So if you're in the Dallas, Texas area, you could go over there and check them out and see if there's a way that you could have a session there at that facility, or something to where they could schedule something for you, right? With that being said, I know that Matt had a guest that would a caller that would have came back on, but I'm going to put in early into this particular episode of the Boxing Source Radio Show. For those that are watching on YouTube, thank you all for doing that. This podcast will be available on iTunes, Google Podcasts, Anchor.fm, Spotify, whatever you use for a podcast. And like I say, at the end of every show, folks, the point of boxing is to hit and not get hit, not to stand and trade. On that note, folks, I'm out. Have a good evening, everybody.